which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the committee secretary note that Patrick Bray is absent and all other commissioners are present? Agenda item number 4, approval of the minutes from the April 15th, 2015 hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we approve the minutes for the April 15th meeting with the addition of the statement that I made at the last meeting.
Motion by Commissioner Hamilton.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Tisch. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item number 5, citizen comment period. Now is the time for citizens who would like to address the Planning and Zoning Commission on any non-agenda item. Are there any speaker cards on this item? Okay. Disclosure of ex parte communications. Okay. Old business, case number 14210-00007 for the Pebble Creek Renaissance Assisted Living Facility. This one has been withdrawn, so no action is necessary. Then new business, item 8.1. To conduct a public hearing to consider the text amendment to Articles 1, 4, and 8 of the City of Goodyear zoning ordinance. Ms. Wilkin, Planning Manager, will present. Open the public hearing.
Thank you, Chairman Peters and members of the Commission. I did leave an additional handout, which was at your place first, and the one that was in your packet, I'm sorry, for some reason, when we exported the red line version, it didn't actually have the red line, so I have a color copy of the red lines. It'll be a little easier to follow along with those changes. I also want to start off by noting that when we published for this item, we had included a publication that we were going to make changes to the sign ordinance in the zoning ordinance, and we're still planning on those changes, but we've been working with the business community on some of those, and it's just taking a little longer for us to do some of the research they asked us to do. So we hope to have that ready for you in June. So we're going to renotice that, and those sign changes will be a separate zoning ordinance text amendment. So tonight we just have a few miscellaneous items besides that. So I'm just going to walk you through so you can kind of follow along on this red line version if that's easiest. And the changes to Article 1 are basically to create a minor amendment process for rezones or use permits. And what we found is sometimes when there's been use permits or rezone approved, some of them may have been approved 20, 30 years ago, sometimes the applicant has asked us to modify one of the stipulations of approval, or they want to modify the text of the PAD document. And what we found is that there could be an easier way to do that than going through a typical process the first time around, because when we're changing text, oftentimes we're not impacting the immediate property owners like we are when we're deciding this area is going to be residential or this area is going to be commercial. So basically what the minor amendment process does, the major thing it does is it takes away the need for a citizen review meeting, because often, just like the zoning ordinance text amendment we're doing tonight, the citizen review meeting is often impractical because it's an impact that has a larger impact on the whole city rather than impacting a specific neighborhood, which is the point of a citizen review meeting, is to go into the neighborhood that's impacted and make sure they have a louder voice. But that, coupled with some internal changes we're making, we'll be able to do some of these changes quickly. One of the examples we saw recently was at the Cow Ranch store that's on Pebble Creek Parkway. There were a few stipulations added to that the business, now that they're operating, has asked to be modified. And, there's this long process to go through to do that, and it makes sense that it's a business, they're open, we're seeing what they're doing, it's not speculative like the first time they went rezone, so it makes sense to have this option for a minor amendment process. But again, they will still have to go through the notices, a public hearing in front of the Planning Commission and City Council. Those requirements would not be waived even for the minor amendment. And page 3, and there's no page numbers, but the third page kind of outlines what circumstances that minor amendment. So if it's changing the text, if it's changing a stipulation, even if they're changing some of the development regulations like the height or setbacks, but it's less than 10%. So, maybe it's allowed 30 feet and they want to allow 32 feet. We're calling those minor amendments. So then moving on a couple pages to Article 4. This is our temporary use section, and we just added, we found that there's a need for temporary laydown yards, and this is something we've allowed in the past. And what a laydown yard is, it's just a temporary construction yard. One of the biggest users of these is APS, that as they're building new facilities, new power lines, they find a little location of property that's undeveloped and use it as a staging area for their construction. We do this too. And in the past, we've had some of those where some neighbors have asked, hey, was this allowed by the city? And so we thought, maybe it does make sense that they go through our temporary permit process. We already have this process for temporary uses, so let's have the laydown yards go through too. And then we can do a quick review. It's like a 5-day permit. It shouldn't greatly impact these businesses in getting done what they need to get done. And that would only apply to those uses that they're doing construction where they don't own the property. When somebody's building a new commercial building, they don't need this kind of permit because they're doing the construction on the property it's happening. Like I said, it's more, like infrastructure projects where you have to create like some type of laydown yard in an area that you're not actually building the building. And finally, we have 3 changes to Article 8, which is our general provision catch-all. The first is a very simple change just to clarify that patios and ramadas can also fall under this category of encroaching into the side yard setback. This is how we've implemented this before. As you can see, it's saying that in a side yard, you can go up to 3 feet from the side lot line if there's, a bay window or similar. And we have in the past allowed that for certain projections of patios too. We're clarifying what our actions have been in the past. This obviously wouldn't supersede any HOA regulations, to the contrary. Next is you can see in this section 8-1-L, we specifically do not allow mobile homes or recreational vehicles or similar vehicles for any use other than a construction office when construction's ongoing on the site. However, again, we've heard from property owners, especially in areas such as the Loop 303, where there's these large industrial properties, that they actually need to have like a trailer for a sales office. And so we found that we looked at some other cities and we found that actually does make sense as long as it's staying in these areas that are large industrial. We don't want to see it in an area where there's, commercial development or residential development right across the street. But, in those areas, it does make sense. They usually own large properties, so there's not going to be an overproliferation of them. And as you can see, we're requiring that at least be 75 acres in size to even qualify to have one of these sales trailers. So that's to, help the property owners of these large industrial sites do what they need to do to get more employers into the city. And finally, we're proposing adding a new section 8-1-R. And we actually have some people in our audience tonight, a couple of students and a teacher from the Desert Edge High School FFA program. They made a presentation to staff a couple weeks ago about, I looked up and heard the term supervised agricultural experience before. But basically what they've done in the past, what they've tried to do is have a learning experience where they get, a chicken or two and raise the chicken from a little chick to full grown. They did it this year for meat, to produce meat, but some programs do it to produce eggs too. And so they approached the city, told us a lot about what they learned about chickens, because obviously chickens in an urban environment can be a concern with noise. We had questions about sanitary conditions and all that. So they gave us a great presentation. And we found out that if you keep the number down to about 3 chickens, that it shouldn't be a major problem. It keeps the pecking order doesn't start, and I guess that's how they get noisy. I never knew that before until the students told us that.
No pun intended, right?
Yeah.
No pun intended on the
Yeah. And so we like this idea of trying this out. Urban farming and urban chickens has been a big issue coming to light. We know other cities have tackled this, so we thought this was a great way to kind of dip our toes into the issue to see if it works. So this would allow, if you're doing a project like this through a school, you could have up to 3 chickens for up to 6 months. And of course, keep them in a sanitary condition, keep them away from your neighbors, and you still have to follow your HOA rules. So if your HOA doesn't allow them, you might not be able to have them. I think that's the student's next project is to start working with the HOAs on how they can get the HOAs to start considering these. So we don't think this will have a great impact to the city because there's not going to be every single household having these at any one time, and it greatly limits the number of chickens. And like I said, some cities have opened this up citywide so anyone can have chickens, so we thought this was a great stepping stone for the city to try this and actually use the students as a resource. So as they do this, we can then talk to them and find out, hey, did your neighbors complain? What did your HOA think? How was this going? And if we learn it's working, then maybe we can in the future consider expanding these rights more. Or if it's not working, we can talk to them. What do we need to do to make this work? If they are getting complaints, if their HOA is upset, we can learn more and regulate them properly. So I'm really excited about this little experiment and working with our local school in trying to make this work and seeing what we can do to partner. And that actually concludes my presentation, so I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Was the 6-month date chosen because that's the duration of the program, or is that when the chicken becomes full grown and is ready to eat? What happens after 6 months?
Thank you, Chairman. I actually extended it. I think it was only 12 weeks. Is that when your program is? 8 to 10 weeks. I just went ahead and made it 6 months just in case the kids build a coop, give them some extend time just in, we know in our business sometimes we plan on something and it gets a little larger, so we wouldn't want somebody calling the city, timing it and on week 9, if we made it 8 weeks, saying, okay, it's been exactly this amount of time. So we thought 6 months was appropriate.
Break our kids' heart at 6 months instead of...
Yeah.
It's okay if they switch chickens every 6 months, they can have them indefinitely in their yard?
Technically there might be a loophole like that, but because this has to go through a program in a school, we don't foresee that happening. That
Pushing for the loophole.
Hmm?
I was trying to promote the loophole.
Oh, promote the loophole, yeah. Like I said, I think we're open to this. We just know that that's a bigger issue that might need some more public input on deciding what we do with urban chickens, but this is a great way to experiment and see if this works for our community.
So would this be in a school environment or would it be in a neighborhood environment? Would somebody take these chickens and put them in their backyard and raise them?
Thank you, Chairman. That's exactly what they do. I mean, they're in school learning about this through the FFA, Future Farmers of America program, but the chickens are actually in their home. The students are responsible for taking care of them, feeding them, and raising them at their home.
Does chickens include rooster? I don't know the chicken rooster. I know that there's a difference, but are roosters allowed in residential areas? Because I do know they make noise.
Our intent, thank you, Chairman, or Chairperson, our intent is to not allow roosters.
Okay.
The word chicken may not make that clear, so that is something we'd be happy to clarify because roosters are the ones that can get noisy. Our intent is hens. So,
That's a good
so
point.
if you'd like to approve that with that change, we'd be happy to fix that up
I
before
think
council.
that'd be a good idea. No one wants to be woken up at 5 o'clock in the morning to the,
Let my kids do that.
We thought this meeting was going to be short.
All right, is there any other discussion or questions? Anyone from the public wish to speak? No? Okay. And with that, can I have a motion?
Mr. Motion with the amendment.
Want to make the motion?
The words.
Yeah, I don't know.
Do you want to move to approve the changes with the revised edition that you?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to make a motion to amend the change of the name to
I think the
Rooster.
Hey, do you want me to do it?
Sure.
I make a motion that we accept the text changes in the language, including modifying the chicken language to specify that it's female chickens that we're talking about.
All right. It's been moved by Commissioner Short and seconded by
Second?
Commissioner Maloney. And put me on the spot. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 8.2, discuss the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting schedule. Ms. Wilkin will present.
Thank you. This should be brief as well. A couple months ago, I brought up that we thought it could be helpful to our customers to sometimes have a second meeting or possibly move this regularly scheduled meeting to another time to accommodate especially those large employers that are coming through and trying to meet very specific deadlines. We don't foresee this happening often. I suspect maybe this would happen once a year, that we might need an additional meeting to accommodate somebody's schedule. So I had two questions for you. One, would the commission be interested in possibly meeting an additional time if necessary to accommodate that? And two, if so, would you like us to set a specific date that we all kind of keep on our calendars? I think I might have told you before, several years ago, we used to have 2 meetings a month because of the workload, and we would have meetings on the first Wednesday and then the third Wednesday, as we do now, of the month. So we could do something like say, hey, that first Wednesday of the month is reserved. Or the other option is, knowing this is going to be rare, that when staff thinks this is necessary, we can reach out to you and see if we can get a quorum for 2 weeks in advance, and just look to the day that works on everybody's schedule. So like I said, there's kind of 2 questions. One, would the commission be willing to have this option open of having alternate meeting days to possibly meet schedules? Like I said, I don't foresee this happening often, but when it needs to happen, it can be important. And then 2, how would we like to schedule those? So I'd put it back to the Planning Commission for any opinions, thoughts.
I have a thought. I think it would be a good idea if we had like a ghost date so that we could, especially around the holidays, once October, November comes, it gets crazy. And, we could just leave that date and know that something might happen. Because if you're scrambling around at the very last minute, you might not get the quorum.
Since we're effectively meeting every 2 weeks or so, would we know by the meeting that we're all here whether or not there's going to be a meeting at that next date? And so would we have at least that 2-week notice that, hey, this ghost date or whatever we want to call it is going to be, we're actually going to convene?
That is correct because of the notices. We should actually be able to give you 3 weeks notice because of the publication procedures that we'd be able to tell you. So if you had that ghost date, we could tell you 3 weeks in advance. Yes, we need you.
If you had that much time, that would be fine.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to lead into my next question. If we are on, a regular scheduled meeting on, the third Wednesday, and the applicant decides that, there's not a quorum here, there's not the supermajority here, I'd rather continue it till the next meeting. Would they have to wait the full 30 days, or would they be able to go to that next, 2 weeks out?
Thank you, Chair. They could do either, and that would kind of be up to the commission on how you would like to handle those kind of procedures. You know,
What
like
does that do for public notice and making sure all the citizens are aware?
as long as you continue an item to a date specific, it preserves the public notice. So as long as, you know, when, oh, yes, I would like to continue it, we're going to continue it, and the commission votes and says it's going to be on this specific date, it preserves the notice, and it doesn't matter if it's the very next meeting or a couple meetings in the future. So on that kind of question, I'd want to know from commission, you know, would you want to entertain? Yes, we'll go ahead and go in 2 weeks to help them out, or would you want staff's help to know, no, we're only going to do that for really special circumstances. We're only going to have that extra meeting because we know your time is valuable, so we don't want to waste your time. And of course, most of our customers want to get through as quickly as possible, and we're doing everything we can to do that. But, you know, my question would be, would you want any applicant to be able to come up and say, oh, I'm going to have you meet in 2 weeks? Or would you want staff to kind of almost triage that for you of when that would be appropriate or not?
Yeah, I would think triage. Let's say you know that in 3 weeks, and everybody knows, public knows that there's going to be a meeting in 3 weeks, and that applicant who's meeting at meeting A, the first one that we're at tonight, they know that. So that would that be something we would encourage them to go the full regular meeting out, or bring them back to the next meeting when we know we're going to be meeting anyway? You know.
Yeah. And with your scenario too, the other thing is, you know, staff typically knows even before something comes to commission, because we have those citizen review meetings, we're hearing from the public when an item's going to be controversial or not. And that's when, you know, too, we can, you know, if we know we're going to meet, we can still, even though we maybe have a ghost date as suggested, we can still ask you, who do you think is going to be able to come, so we can see how many people we're going to have, and then tell the applicant, are you comfortable with this vote? You know, we're recommending approval, or, you know, hey, this is pretty controversial and you're only going to have 5 commissioners there, so you might want to make a decision on what meeting date you go to. We can definitely counsel our customer on that, and, you know, work with you on who thinks they're going to be there and everything.
Well, I'm okay with 2 meetings, having a ghost date, if that's what we're calling it, and just be aware of it. You know, as long as we're aware more than 1 week that ghost date's actually going to be filled, I think that should be okay.
Does that seem to be the consensus from everybody? Okay, so then we'll put something together. I think you can always assume that we're not having a meeting on that ghost date if for some reason you don't hear from us, unless you hear from us. But, you know, talking about the holidays, that might actually be a good idea that, you know, sometimes the November and December meetings start getting really close to the holidays. And so we could also look at maybe in those months using that ghost date as an alternative meeting date, depending on your schedule, so that maybe it's a little more favorable meeting date. So rather than closing in on Thanksgiving, depending on when those holidays fall, sometimes they can be the same week or right before when everyone wants to take vacation. So it might be also another tool for that, to make the meetings more convenient for both you and the customers. So we'll look at that in the future as well. The public would be notified the same way they're notified about current meetings. The agenda is posted. And if it's a public hearing item, then they get notices mailed, legal ad in the paper, and the properties posted at least 2 weeks in advance. So on a specific case, they get notified, and then the agenda going up is the notification of the meeting being held.
Are there any other questions? All right. Any staff communication? I see a new face over there. Mr. Chris Baker would like to introduce himself.
Good evening. Pleasure to be with you. This is May 20th, and so this is actually my first month anniversary. How about that? I've met with most of you except Ms. Short. I know we had a scheduling conflict that was entirely my fault, so I apologize for that. But delighted to be with you, and look forward to working with you all as we move forward. Just a brief 2-second bio on me. I've been in this arena for the better part of 20 years, almost 20 years, on both the public sector and the private sector side. So I understand what it takes to produce the documents that come before you for approval, the level of effort, time, investment, and concern. I also know the dedication that you all show as Planning Commission members and the work that Katie and her group do on a day in and day out basis to help advise and make good decisions for the city. And being in this business for as long as I have, I certainly also understand the citizen perspective of things. So I'm looking forward to rolling up my sleeves and getting involved. Goodyear has a fantastic team and a bright future, and I'm delighted to be working with you to make it even brighter. So thank you for your support and effort and dedication to the city.
Thank you.
Thank
Welcome
you.
aboard.
And I did want to add one thing. I just wanted to, you all saw the cupcakes up here. I just want to officially thank Peter Fine for bringing cupcakes. I know Peter's a familiar face to us all. He served on our general plan committee, which you know served for 18 months, collectively put in 4,000 volunteer hours into the project. And he's been an active participant in our planning and zoning commission meetings. And unfortunately, with Lockheed Martin's moving so many of their employees to Colorado, Peter is part of that. So we're losing him as a citizen. And so he was thoughtful enough to bring cupcakes as a little farewell gift to us. And so we really appreciate that, Peter. Thank you for your dedication as a resident. And we really appreciate everything you've done for the department and the city.
Thank you for your service. All right, there being no further business to discuss, this meeting is adjourned.